everyone. Welcome to the Inclusive Insights podcast, the show for leaders by leaders. I'm your host, Neetu Razdan, and today we have an exceptional guest with us. He's a seasoned expert in talent strategy, having played a pivotal role in scaling early stage startups. Please welcome to the show, Ken Morris. Ken, welcome to the show.
Hey, hello. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Happy to be here. Happy to have, thanks for having me on the show.
Awesome. Ken, our topic today is talent strategy transformation. So we're going to start by delving into the world of talent strategy transformation. From your extensive experience, how would you define talent strategy transformation, especially in the context of early stage startups, because that's the play field you're in?
Thanks, Neetu, for that introduction and setting the stage. So, talent strategy for startups is, according to me, the most important focus that startup founders need to have, because the talent that they get in at the early stage will set the tone for the company in the months and years ahead. If if they do it right, they are well on the way to a great start. And if not, you know the answer.
Perfect. So I agree 100% with that. Just to get a little bit more context, can you talk a little bit about your background and how your journey led you to becoming a leader in scaling startups?
All right. My journey, I've been in business for decades, for many years, but my journey into IT services started about 25 years back in the Middle East, actually, strangely, where I was heavily involved in actually staffing uh, in enterprise projects. So we actually used to work with companies, mostly in those days, banks and those kind of institutions, to actually help them staff their projects. And that work continued as I came to the US in the early 2000s. And I've helped companies go from start their projects from scratch, from zero to whatever numbers. The biggest one that I've done was about 0 to 65 in about 30 days time. So fast forward to the currently where I am is that since I'm in the middle of, we are in Silicon Valley. I've been here for the last 20 odd years. I soon started looking around, and I saw that talent acquisition was a major thing for startups, because they always scramble to find the right talent when they start the companies.
Mhm.
So I started working with some startups to help them in their journey, and I found that to be much more rewarding, because you could see the immediate results of your talent acquisition help to these startups, because you work with them, you're in the weeds with them, you understand what the company does, and you help them get the right talent at the right time. And so that was much more rewarding. And then sooner than later, we started focusing just purely on startups and helping them find talent. So it's a long answer, but I've been doing this for 25 years. So
Yeah. Well, it's long, but it's impressive for sure. So, in your experience, what are some of the common challenges you have seen startups, particularly in, pre-seed and, seed stages regarding talent? And how have you helped them, address these challenges?
in the early stage of startups, pre-seed especially, it's a scramble. The founders' money is in the game, in play. There's a founders and friends and founders round that keeps going on. So the money is very limited. So when money is limited, oftentimes, I mean, the mind also gets scrambled, and you actually need to. You are not there just as a talent finder or a recruiter, but you're also there as a kind of a trusted advisor to the founders. And if you don't get into that position, sooner than later or fast enough, you can actually be making a lot of mistakes. Or when I
Hmm.
say mistakes, is that you could probably be hiring the wrong people. I mean, you may not get a culture fit, because that is the most important thing in startup recruitment, is the culture fit.
Mhm.
You just can't go and pick up a guy from a bank or an insurance company or a manufacturing company and say, hey, tomorrow onwards you're going to work with a startup. They're not going to fit. They are going to expect everything given to them by an IT department and things like that. Whereas in a startup, you wear all the hats. So it's very important for us to get close to the founders, close enough to actually help them in getting the right people, and then close enough to also help them or give them the right kind of insights. I won't say advice, because we are nobody to give advice. We could give them insights as to what could or could not happen if they do certain things. So that's how we actually work with our startups. And I think we have been doing something right, because some of our startups that we work with, it's been 9 years or 10 years since we've been starting with them. It's been 9 or 10 years since we've worked with a few of our startups, and we're still working with them.
That's awesome. That's great. So another question that's something that everybody tries to figure out is hiring for immediate needs versus hiring for future scalability. So when you advise these startup founders, how do you approach it, or how do you strike a balance? Because as you said, in startups, there's a burning need. We need to be agile, you need to be fast, you need to get the product out as soon as possible. So how do you draw a balance between hiring for speed versus hiring to scale in future?
Oh, I wish there was an answer for that question. But it's a very interesting question, and this is a very tough balance to keep all the time, because when we work with startups, hiring requirements are given to us, and we ask that near fatal question as to by when do you want the person to join you. They will always say yesterday. So it's not a, not a good question to ask. But even in this even in this scramble, we do have to set the expectations that we can find somebody for you like tomorrow. He'll start day after tomorrow maybe, but uh, but please don't. We may not be able to vouch for the soft skills of the person or the longevity of the person and things like that. So we always try to balance it off by setting the expectations right, saying that give us some more time, give us maybe 1 week or 2 weeks, so that we find the right person for you, rather than the right person right now, because the right person right now may not turn out to be the right person for 1 year down the line. So this is a very tough question. There's no science behind it. It's all about how you actually gel with the person who's joining, and how you can, now that you know the startup founders and their vision, their vision of how the company should be, the culture and all that. We are able to do that fitment for these individuals who, by the time we send this person to the startup founder, we would have gone through a HR interview, a tech interview, and then a couple of other 1 hour sessions with the person to
Hmm.
understand what the culture is all about. What is he all about, and what is she all about, before we send him to the startup founder. So this is a. I mean, I think it comes with experience, but this is very essential, because the culture fit. At the end of the day, technology skills you can get anywhere, but the culture fit is most important in startups as they keep growing.
I completely agree with you. And, hearing you talk about, these aspects, I feel like it's a matter of luck. If you get lucky, you get great talent, but it's not that way. I think you have to do a lot of hard work as an employer to be the employer of choice. Are there any strategies that you feel work for startups to be that employer of choice, or
Yeah,
for attracting talent? Go
sorry.
ahead.
It's a very important and very important question, and a very important aspect of what startup founders are all about. Uh, the couple of things or the few things that I can think of is that it is good to have a great product and a I mean vision for the product, but in order to build the product and scale the company later on after you pass the seed stage and you get your Series A funding and you start growing, it's too late then to actually start setting the culture for the company. So the culture for the company has to be set from day one. And culture is not something that you can dictate, but culture is something that you have to live. You have to live and show by example. So it's one of my favorite topics.
Mm-hmm.
Where you see a lot of startup founders not caring for culture, and they sooner than later hit a brick wall because they find people leaving them. They find a lot of murmuring in the company and people not. I mean, there's a lot of politicking in the company, for want of a better word. So, but whereas if the startup founders have a clear idea of what the culture should be and they start living it out by their example, by leading by example, it makes a whole lot of difference. And I don't have any concrete examples of startup culture, but if you look around and without naming names, my favorite example, since I am very interested in this topic, is to see the way companies work. And
Mm-hmm.
and 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 when I say, I mean, these are high growth startups, or these could be in any, not necessarily the tech industry, but I can give you an example. You know, about I think it's about 6 or 7 years back, 8 years back, where I was in India and I was doing some domestic hopping between cities. I encountered this check-in lady. I mean, she was a young kid. I mean, she was probably 20s, I think. Very rude with me. I mean, I don't know for what reason, but then I
Mm-hmm.
said, okay, fine. I'm going to say this. I said, I mean, I didn't tell her that, but I'm telling you now. She probably has a lousy CEO, because if the CEO is a lousy guy and he keeps acting like this, no wonder this kid is behaving like this, because kid is the face of the company. And to me, she represents that company. And as you can imagine, that company didn't last. I mean, I'm not saying I'm a prophet, but saying that I wasn't very shocked to know that the company went down 2 years later. So if this is
Wow.
the way they treat their guests or their customers, I mean, this is the culture that has been given to them by the CEO or the founding team. So
Yeah.
no surprises there. And you see
Wow.
many of these examples in the. I mean, this is an Indian company. I'm nothing wrong with any Indian company. I'm not saying that as an example or discrediting them. But even in the US, there's so many companies that I don't like to name, big companies, small companies, middle companies, who directly reflect this. If the CEO's culture is reflected in the company, and I'm not just talking the negative part of it, the positive part of it. You come across companies that give you such a good vibe. You just say, man, this is like. And the same example. I mean, I'm just giving another example from India, since I've put a negative on India. I was actually I was checked into a hotel in India, in Cochin, and I mean, nothing wrong. Everything went well, as expected, because it was a good hotel. It's not a known chain, but it was a very good hotel. And then this thing that shocked me was this. This is again culture to the best. I mean, there's an example of what culture can take you. I was actually, since it was a long stay, I was giving out my clothes to the laundry.
Mm-hmm.
And in India, the practice is you ask for a laundry, the person comes to your room. And this young kid, I mean, he was probably maybe 21, 22. And, these kids who are actually do all this kind of work in hotels are normally not educated. I mean, they are probably, you'll be surprised if they are plus two, meaning they have passed high school and things like that. And very rarely they might have college degree. And this kid
Mm-hmm.
you could make out. He was a very nice kid. He smiled. He talked to me. I mean, he came in. He asked me to, count all the clothes and all that. And the question that shocked me, it even gives me goosebumps now. The question, I mean, he was just seeing me doing all this, and he said, "Sir, how was your stay in the hotel?" Oh man, I mean, a laundry boy asking me how was my stay in the hotel. This is like off the charts, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
so I had to write a comment in that guest report, and this is a reflection of the leadership. I mean, if the leadership say that, okay, you're a laundry boy, I don't care what you do, you just have to pick up clothes and bring it to us, fine, he'll do that. But somebody has been working on this kid to actually tell him that you when you meet customers, you talk to them, you find out how the day is. And he asked me that in English. He asked me that question. I mean, I was zapped. I mean, it's almost like going to a Tata hotel in India, and if you go to a Tata hotel in India, like a Taj or whatever it is, they don't call you sir or madam. They call you by name, Mr.
Mm-hmm.
Morris, Mr. So and so. They know that wherever they meet you, whichever corner of the hotel they meet you, around the corner they say, "Hey, Mr. Morris, how are you doing?" I mean, that's culture.
That's that. Wow. So many things in that story, and the one you kind of narrated previously. I was when you were telling this story about the laundry boy, I was thinking, is it if it was just someone working on this person, then probably there are other people working on other people as well. So is it that, or is it actually this kid or this laundry boy wanted to do something better in life, and he was adaptable, he was ready to transform, he was the mindset was different from others. In my opinion, I feel like it comes from both sides. you have you have to have a great culture, you have to lead by example, but also from the employee standpoint, they have to be receptive to that. And again, as you said, it again comes down to the cultural fit. If you don't have the right fit between the employee and the employer, then it probably never works. So
Right.
great points there.
Right, absolutely. The word over there that I think is apt for this discussion, and for even for everything else, is the word is coachable. I mean, so
Coachable.
when we talk to founders, and when we talk to investors also these days, the one thing that they're all looking for is, are these founders coachable?
Mm-hmm.
If they know everything off the bat, then I mean, if one knows everything, then one doesn't need to learn anything. So they are not coachable. And there are so many of founders that I've found who come across as knowing everything. So then you can't even talk to them. There's no area of improvement for them, and that's when everything starts going downhill. But yeah, I mean, so very important point. Even if you are talking to somebody who is going to be a laundry boy, or who's going to be doing office work in the case of startups, or office admin, for example, or something like that, or an intern you're taking from college. The one thing that you would like to know, asking the right questions, is to know whether the person has that eagerness to learn. Is he coachable, or is she coachable? And if that happens, then there is no limit to how the company can grow, how much the company can grow.
Perfect. So now I'm kind of thinking, do we at pre-seed or early stages of a startup have that kind of understanding or that kind of time at our disposal where we can go and try to fit uh, you know people in the culture and then hire them? What in your experience have you seen? Do people go and deliberately check for the cultural fit, or do we in early stages, particularly pre-seed, seed, do we just go find great talent and we don't care about whether it's a cultural fit or not and hire? What have you seen happen?
Yeah, so it's very difficult to answer that question. There's no right answer for this question, because every startup or every situation is very different. So some startups have to do something in a very limited time. They might bring in a person to do that work, and he might just get going. So in that case, if they know that the person is going to be there only for a short time, very limited time, they might actually just make a compromise and say, okay, we'll live with this for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or whatever it is, if it's a life and death situation. But if it is not, I mean, I would always recommend that you do the extra mile, go the extra mile to actually make sure that this person is the right fit. Because the 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 flip side for that is that if you don't find this person to be a right fit, then your problems are just going to multiply. I mean, it is just going to multiply, because you have not I mean, we can make mistakes. We're all human beings. We are not yet AI bots as yet. But uh, you know, uh, but as human beings, we can make mistakes. But as we make a mistake is not a mistake. It's a learning opportunity. So we can do better the next time. But the focus is to see that you just don't hire for the skills, but you hire for the skills and the culture, which actually is the best thing for startups. Because, as I said earlier, referred to earlier, and as everybody knows, I mean, in a startup, you need to do everything. You can't just say no to anything. Oh, I don't do that. I don't do this. But
Yeah.
somebody who can do everything, who has the capacity and the attitude, that is most important.
Perfect. So, can you share a success story with us where you played a pivotal role or your company played a pivotal role in building an early stage startup?
Sure. There are quite a few examples, but one of the examples that come to my mind is where we. I mean, this is a very strange example, but is an example where we didn't do something. I mean, so what I'm saying is that we also need to know how the startups are growing, and we also have to be aware of the fact that at the end of the day, we are a trusted partner,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to know when we have to step in and when we have to step out, or when we have to stay back. So this is an example of staying back, knowing the situation and staying back. So this is a early stage startup which we signed up in 2018, and they were local here in San Francisco. We were the first team on the ground, helping them build the POC, and and we were in weekly meetings or in constant touch with the founders. But so happened. I mean, rightfully, they had a great product. They had a great product market fit, and they started getting funding and they started growing. So as they started growing, there were certain areas that we were specialized in actually helping them in, and there were certain areas that we were not so specialized in helping them in. And so they happened to actually gravitate towards those areas where we were not specialists. So we could advise them to go against it, but that's not what we did. We are supposed to be trusted partners, and we live to our word. So we got a praise for the situation from the founders, and they wanted to go a certain path, and we had to be honest with them. We told them that we don't have expertise in this path, but you bring in who you have to bring in, and we'll support that person to the best of our abilities as we can, because at the end of the day, we are a technical software services partner. We are not running the company. So these are situations where, and so this was in 2000, 2 years after they started, maybe 2019 or 20, and we are still partners with them. We are still work with them. The company got acquired. They're still working with. We are working with a much larger team, and we still have a core team of engineers who started in 2018 with them. So we do have to be sensitive to the startups growth, and not every step that they take would actually help us grow. It may
Mm-hmm.
be that we have to step back for maybe a few months or a few weeks or maybe a year, and then but we are still supporting them. And so the nature of our affiliation with the startups is as a partner, and as a partner we have to do the right thing for them all the time.
That's a compelling story. I mean, it feels like being a trustworthy partner does go a long way. So, now going back to what your expertise is, how do you generally approach building a strong employer brand for startups versus as more established companies in the same industry?
So one of the things that keeps that actually helps companies, the startups in the early stage, especially when it comes to talent acquisition or talent attracting the right talent to them, is to show that they are different from they're not just different from the enterprise culture, but they also give they actually help the whoever is joining them, help them along in their career as well. So there are two aspects that normally especially high flying talent normally looks for, is that does how what is the brand, or what is the longevity of this company? Will they last? I mean, so they are going to look at the founders, they are going to look at the who's backing them up, and who's what area they're in. But more important, they are actually going to look, they're going to dig deep for culture. They're going to dig deep for, are these guys going to have my back? Are these guys going to fire me at the first instance that they don't have money, or things like that? So this is something that the founders should be projecting, or should be actually aware of, and living through that, is that is how can we actually be a responsible company for the employees who trust us, who leave their fancy cabins and come and join us in a garage. I mean, it's not a garage, but or a shared workspace, and then still perform and work for us. So there's a whole set of things that a startup founders can do for giving that environment or that safety net for these people who are coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And for the people who are coming in, what we look for is that how much are they going to sacrifice, or are they willing to sacrifice these kind of things, or are they going to just come in here for a couple of weeks and say, hey, no, it's not for me. So there are things that we can do from our side to make sure that there's a fit over here, and the founders also have to do much more, because they have to lay the groundwork for that image to be projected onto the talent that comes in.
Awesome, great answer. So two things that stand out for me is adaptability and agility when it
Mhm.
comes to startups.
Mhm.
So how can startups ensure that their talent strategy remains agile and adaptable? Keeping in mind the rapid changes in the business landscape.
Yeah, it's a good question. And normally what we find in the what do you call among startups, or the startups that are successful in attracting and keeping talent, is that they always have a very they always have a very transparent or open environment, and where things are not actually in silos. So you have a finance team, or you have an HR or admin team that is not just an HR or admin team, but or just a finance team, but they also speak business. So
Mm-hmm.
everybody in the company talks or speaks the same language, and they're not saying that, okay, I want 100% attendance. They're saying that how can we actually build a culture, or how can we build engagement, how can we help you guys be more involved, or things like that. So what I'm saying is that the culture seeps down at this level, at the startup level. The culture seeps down to the next level. It's not just with the founders, that anybody who joins the team has to keep in mind, or they are made aware of the fact that they are a core team, that they could be employee number 2 or employee number 20, but employee number 10, 2 or 20, but they have the responsibility of being understanding that they are a core team. And it doesn't matter if you're employee 2 or employee 20 when a company of 1,000 people, which is what we are going to be in 3 years time. That's probably how the founders should look at it. And so anybody joining at that stage should definitely see their role much more than what they are, because when they are employee 2 or employee 20 in a company of 500 or 1,000 people, we're talking of them being very, very core to what the company's growth is all about. So that is probably one of the best ways to give them the longer term picture of where the company is heading to, and make them understand that you have sacrificed a lot to come here, but hey, we are going to give it back to you 10 times or 20-fold, things like that.
Great. You for sure are a culture advocate. So why not deep dive into culture? So how do you think startups can intentionally shape their culture from the early stages to ensure scalability as they grow?
Uh, as I've indicated here earlier, the culture aspects have to come down from the top. I mean, just like something similar to this, you can't actually teach culture. You can't actually sermonize about culture. You have to live it. You have to put a stake in the ground, saying that, okay, this is how we're going to do our stuff. And I can't turn around as a CEO. I can't turn around and do just the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
I have to do that. I have to show it in my daily activity, my stuff. So this is something that is a slow moving. You don't see results immediately, but cumulatively, as this culture starts seeping down, it gets reflected in everybody in the company. And as I was giving you examples earlier, it in a large company, it reflects even in the person who actually has, supposedly no responsibility for anything towards their clients or customers, but still they behave and work in a particular fashion that the customer gets a pleasant surprise or a shock to know that this is how the company works. So that is exactly what we're talking about in our in a software startup. These interfaces are normally with the developers, and if a developer thinks that he or she comes to work 9 to 5, I have this code to push out, I have the stand-up meeting next week, I have something to put in over there in GitHub, then they are missing the bus. The culture is not there. But if they feel that, okay, I am doing this because I have the company wants to launch the product by so and so date, so everything that I do now goes towards the launch. And if I do this thing, above and beyond, as soon as my the company's customers start using the software, they should say wow. And so then I'm actually, I'm going much beyond just writing some code and putting it in GitHub, but I'm being very, very mindful of the fact that this is more than something that I'm just putting out there. And so that's the cultural fit that we all love to have. We all love to inculcate in our companies as the companies grow. And then you find that that every single person, when they add up, the impact that they have on the outside world, especially to their customers and their clients, and that to the clients, it actually adds up. And that's when clients start getting very much attached to the company. I mean, you get the stickiness factor, you get more business, all those kind of good stuff happens after that.
Great. I feel companies that are aware or have great cultures, understand their purpose or are purposeful, have a mission, a vision, and live to their core values, they are much more successful. What is your take on importance of core values? How can startups ensure that these values aren't just words on paper? Because sometimes we just write down our core values and then we forget about them. It's all about walking the walk and talking the talk. So how can companies ensure that these values are actually lived and not just put on paper?
Right. It's a good question, Neetu. This actually, there are various ways to do it. I mean, it's not that there is a single way to do it, but there are many ways to do it. The kind of things that I've seen being very successful in startups is when the founding team actually um, interacts directly with all their employees. It could be 5, it could be 50, but they have to find time to interact with all of them on a formal or semi-formal basis to make sure that whatever whatever has been set in the beginning is being followed. So one of the examples is one of the very very what do you call vital tools for these kind of things to happen is on one-on-one meetings. So when it is not very difficult to have a 15-20 minute structured one-on-one meeting with employees,
Mm-hmm.
once a month, once in 2 months, once in 3 months, just to get a feel of what's happening. And as you rightly said, I mean, culture and mission statements and values are not what we stick on a wall. But in these one-on-one meetings, the founder or the founding team will actually, try and find out from these meetings from their employees as to where have you last used this core value, for example. Can you give me an example in the last 1 month or 2 months where you have used this, or do you find difficulty in using this, or whatever that may be? So they ask these open-ended questions on situations, and they can then realize, or they can understand if the person is in sync with your values and your thought process, or are they struggling to get there, or they don't want to get there. I mean, those are all different questions. So if they don't want to get there, maybe they're setting them up for failure, and they have to find answers for that. But if they are struggling to get there, then it's up to the founder to actually tell them what the right way is. So one-on-one meetings, according to me, are I think the one most important thing that a startup can do or invest in, because this is an investment of time.
Mm-hmm.
You can always say that you don't have time, but that is again a philosophical question. You always have time. You have to make time for something. You have to have your time in place, time or your calendar in place, so that you can do all this in a day, in a week, in a month. And so this is a very important aspect of the company. And if it needs nurturing, I mean, I mean, like everything else in life, there are certain things that need nurturing, and culture is a nurture. I mean, ready for being nurturing. If it is not nurtured, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen automatically or like magic. It has to be nurtured day in and day out, and every week, every month, every quarter, for the company to succeed.
I completely agree. I think uh, living the values or making sure the core values are not on just paper involves leadership for sure. They need to exemplify and they need to show that these core values are integrated in the day-to-day operations of the company. And it also means that you have to incorporate them when you are evaluating people, say for their performance, right? And recognizing and rewarding them when they exhibit these behaviors or these core values. I think all of this is important, and we as leaders or we as startup founders have to be super consistent with making sure we live our culture, we live by our core values. This is great. But now the tricky thing about culture is the globalization. Now that we have become borderless, you will see every company has two or three other, satellite locations. Maybe not within the country. It will be, offshore or in multiple countries. How how can we ensure that the talent strategy and culture are inclusive and adaptable to different regions, to different markets, to different countries? And I think it goes for your talent, your employees, as well as your customers. What can startups do, or what can companies do in general?
So again, this is a very interesting question. We've lived through this because we were a purely US based company. We acquired an offshore center, which was a running company, and we had to merge the cultures, and we had to make sure that the culture fit was there even before we started, talks about acquiring the company. So it's an important question. So one of the ways you can do that is, again, there are no silver bullets for all this. One of the ways you can do this is to actually talk to all the employees in the company, get to know their desires, aspirations, whatever it is, and kind of making sure that you are broadly in line, you are working in the same direction,
Mm-hmm.
broadly. I mean, there could be exceptions, but you can always work on those exceptions, but make sure that they are in alignment. And then the other way to do it is, and the other way that actually works really well is to have, I mean, of course, there are Zoom meetings, there are Teams meetings, or whatever, but by the end of the day, they're all virtual meetings. They are called virtual for a reason, because you're not face to face with somebody in reality.
Mm-hmm.
So that is actually the other important point, that at some point in time we'll have to start making exchanges or cultural exchanges of employees coming from one location, coming to the other location, working with this location for 3-4 weeks, 1-2 weeks, whatever it is optimal, so that actually they get to know and feel and see and breathe the air that you're in, and they kind of understand what we do here better. So the next time you're on a virtual call, they understand many things much better. And we've seen this happening in person, in India. I mean, so we have multiple locations in India, and when one person actually has been working in one location and he has never visited the other location, you see the enormous difference in everything, in the behavior, in the way they are approached, in the way they are perceived, once they start sitting with the other teams, sitting at the same desk, sitting at same room and working with them. It's a totally different feeling. So I think the most important thing in all these cultural aspects, especially in this post-COVID times, is not to forget the fact that human beings are human beings only, and much better in interactions, etc., when they meet face to face, shake hands, give a hug, or whatever the culture may be,
Yeah.
and that actually, and start working together. I mean, you may be working together in a room without even talking to each other, but it makes a lot of difference. If you go out, have a coffee, have some small talk. All that cannot be done on Zoom. You can be in a smaller room. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
nothing wrong with Zoom, but you can be in a smaller room. But the small talk doesn't become small talk because you're not having coffee or something else. So these are very important things. I mean, these are core to the company growth. We could do it when the companies are smaller much more often, but and this becomes a kind of, you feed out of these interactions as the companies grow bigger. And maybe as the companies grow bigger, you may not have an all hands meeting in one location, but you might have one division or one group having a meeting together. So all this, all this is the human side of the companies,
Yeah.
that sometimes companies do miss out on this in their rush to meet numbers. but but these are very important points, for the growth in culture, and especially about, I mean, trans border cultures.
I agree. I agree. I feel like it's one of the, you know, bigger challenges that companies have. Hey, how do you create a cohesive global identity while you are respecting the local differences? I think understanding each other's culture and respecting that is definitely, a vital piece. Now when you're global, you can't ignore the technology piece because that's what kind of binds, it's the connective tissue. So moving a little bit into the tech realm, how do you see startups leveraging technology in their talent strategy, especially in the context of automation and now with artificial intelligence, on the horizon? What do you see?
That's a good question, and it's what everybody is talking about right now. Everybody talks about AI. But I think more than the AI part of it is to have a structure and a framework or a format in which you want to do all this. And there are a number of technology tools, or there are a few technology tools or platforms that can help you do this. We
Hmm.
use one such in our company, especially, and find it very useful to actually bring the company together around a common purpose, or try to a common purpose, and to see that whatever we have set as culture and values and mission for the company is being followed. So it is a complex system, but it has been laid out well in this particular tool, so that we can set targets, we can do our OKRs and KPIs and all those kind of things, all those great things that can help us grow the company around a culture. And even though we may be growing, and even though we may be in different locations, it actually helps us to be grounded and to know that we are part of a same common team with a common theme, and objective and values and things like that. So there are these tools that are available, and I would definitely encourage people to use these kind of tools, because it goes a long way in helping the cultural uh, unity of the company, uh, as we grow.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great answer. Now I'm going back to your company. You are globally kind of located. You have multiple locations. And post COVID, we saw a rise in remote work and hybrid teams. I'm just trying to understand how has being remote or hybrid influenced the influenced the trend in talent strategy? And have you seen any adjustments that startups need to make or have made just to be successful?
Yeah. It's a very tough question, but we are going through this great flux right now, where even as we speak, companies of any big or small, they're all thinking about the same thing. what could be a strategy or what would be a strategy as we go along. But I think everybody has their own priorities and the way they want to work. They sometimes lay down the ground rules. But at least for within our company, we are very uh, we are very cognizant of the fact that people have, in some cases, they have enjoyed working from home without loss of productivity, and there are stats as to how to slice and dice these numbers. But the fact is that whenever a startup comes up with a policy saying that this is how the hybrid team would like to work, I think they have to be cognizant of the fact that there cannot be anything written in stone. That you can't dictate terms saying that okay. I mean, blindly. There will be like exceptions. I mean, I know certain companies work with a 10% exception. Sometimes they work with a 20% exception, as in
Mm-hmm.
10% of the staff are given liberty to work from wherever and things like that. So I think that 10% would be going up to maybe 20% now. But that is how I think we can strike a balance between teams that want to work remote and teams that should be working together. And again, there are some teams that don't have to come to office because that's the nature of their work, like it could be sales or customer support or things like that. But other teams, like a design team or a development team, we've seen the difference. If the development team sits together and work, the productivity is so high, is much more higher. Then they themselves come to us and tell us, "Hey, you know what? This is great." So it is a learning process. I mean, every company is going through this cycle right now. Some companies, have already gotten into a groove of working hybrid, but many other companies are still, finding out what's best for them. And I don't know. This is probably not the right time to give a. I mean, it's these are the trends that are happening right now, and it's live. It is every day, every other day, or every day you see something coming up as to this works, this doesn't work, and so we are in an area of flux, and things will work out sooner than later.
That's great. I'm thinking now that things are in flux, how do you measure whether a particular strategy in around talent is successful or not? Let's talk about you guys. Do you have KPIs that you go after and measure and see whatever you kind of deployed is successful? For example, hey, everybody is remote. Do you lay down KPIs and say, oh, this worked or this didn't work? Or what KPIs should companies, particularly startups, look at to make sure that their talent strategy is actually successful or is working?
Um, that is definitely there. I mean, you have cases where you have. I mean, for example, in our case, we had earlier in the year last year, we had actually set up certain non-work related. You can say health and wellness KPIs. I mean, this is
Nice.
very interesting. So we had set them health and wellness KPIs. I know I'm not embarrassed to say that that failed spectacularly. I mean, it didn't work at all because we are talking about getting up in the morning at maybe 6 or 7 a.m. and doing meditation and yoga together and all that. I mean, these are all. I mean, these are all nice to have, but my morning may not be your morning. So my morning may be 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Somebody else's morning may be 10 a.m. So this whole concept of a virtual meeting for meditation and all that. I mean, these are things. I mean, you learn by doing all this. You learn by mistakes. And we are a smaller company. We are a smaller footprint. We have about 55 to 60 employees, and maybe it's a numbers game. Maybe if you're a company with 1,000 employees, you will probably have 10 people coming for the meditation, which is 1%. For us, 1% would be a micro of a person, so it doesn't work.
Right.
So it's a numbers game. So we have to be, cognizant of the fact that people have different things to do, and not everybody is into health and wellness, and it's a long journey. So so there are some KPIs that will really work if you're remote, and there are other certain KPIs will work if you're not remote. So while having a wish list of KPIs and things that you would like to implement and do, and measure. We have to be cognizant of the fact, or we have to be more mature to know what will work and what will not work. And I'm not embarrassed to say this. I mean, this is how we learn. This is how we grow.
This is a great example. I love it. It didn't work remotely, meditation and all of it, because everybody's morning is different. So how did you guys, or just let's talk general, how do you think startups can iterate and refine their talent strategy based on the insights gained from from these metrics? For example, once you realized, hey, no one is joining these wellness sessions or meditation sessions, what did you guys do? Was it like, let's scrape it tomorrow or no one comes, or was there a gradual process, or did you do something different? What can you do?
So we decided to meditate about it. I'm kidding, uh, but it's actually it actually surprised us. I mean, to be very honest, it surprised us as to why everybody is not coming. But then we realized that this is something that so this happened earlier last year, which was like we were in the coming out mode of COVID at the time. So we had less people coming to office, and so what we decided at that point in time when we knew that this has bombed spectacularly, we decided to actually lay off on it for some time, and maybe just send people out reminders or notes saying that, okay, it's not a bad idea to meditate on your own. And then we'll have this practice of a meditation or a common session when we have more people in attendance in office. So we
Hmm.
might actually start relook at this when we are sometime this year, when the right time comes, and when we have more people attending office. It'll not be a early morning meditation, but something similar which can get the people together in a room and focus on the health and wellness aspect of things. Because in a be it a startup or be it a company that works very closely with startups, we have to say that we work very closely with startups, and for us that means that we work at strange hours and we work long hours. If there is a release to be made, we are there with the team, step in step, step by step, and we work with them to make sure that the thing happens. So there is a lot of stress, and there's a lot of strain on the employees as well. So it is always fair to give them the breaks, to give them avenues in which they can actually uh, breathe, take a deep breath, do something outside of the work, and find common ground or common and get themselves, rejuvenated, even if it's for a short time, for a day or for a week, things like that. So this is always there on our mind, but we have to make sure that we can actually make an impact for a slightly larger group, and it may not be the way we envisage it in the beginning, but it could be notes, it could be reminders, it could be something we do on our platforms that we use to remind people that, hey, it's 7 a.m. time for you to do something on your own. So things like that. I mean, there are a lot of ways to do it, but we are still finding we are still in a research mode, so to say, to find the right fit.
Great. I feel like at the highest level, it's all about being agile in making these adjustments. The moment you see something isn't working or it's not, what your people need, you just adjust it to whatever, and that comes from, feedback from your employees or from your customers, or you can see the market dynamics changing and you can adapt accordingly. I mean, wow, this is definitely a science mixed with a lot of art. So let's talk about a little bit from a future standpoint. What future trends do you anticipate in the realm of talent strategy, particularly for startups, early stage startups?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, this is again a fast-moving landscape. As technology keeps coming in, there are more and more ways in which technology can be incorporated in talent search and talent acquisition. what used to happen even 5 years back is kind of getting
Mm-hmm.
less relevant now. So you have, yeah, and so I think there is a lot of platform play that is coming into the picture. There are a lot of companies that have their platforms to actually persuade companies to pick up talent from their platforms and use them. But at the same time, talent acquisition, again, a platform talent acquisition doesn't probably focus too much on culture. So if
Mm-hmm.
companies are worried about the culture fit of these folks, they have to have a more curated way of doing this search. And that's when it comes to companies like ours, that we have been doing this project based search for years. And as you've rightly said, if you have been with us during the whole discussion here, this is more like an art than a science. If it's a science, you can duplicate it, replicate it, uh, you know have it on a platform and given on a platter. But in many cases you can't do that. I mean, so the platform approach might work for enterprise companies, but it is definitely going to be a tough fit for a startup. So I think the curated approach, or the handheld manual approach, or the non-platform approach may be more suitable for startups. Whereas if they feel that they want somebody to fit in a role for say 2 months, a short time, they can always, we ourselves would probably recommend them going to a platform and getting somebody from there. But I mean, again, the choices are there. I mean, at the end of the day, the startup founders or the startup hiring managers have to decide what is their best fit.
Great. Wow, this was a cool conversation. And as we conclude our conversation, Ken, do you have any final thoughts or advice for our listeners, especially those involved in scaling startups?
Oh, I mean, I get involved in many networking sessions where sometimes we are co-sponsors, sometimes we are attendees, um, and I have a friend. I'm not going to name him, but he has been around for some time. He's a I mean, he's a founder multiple times. He's an investor now.
Mm-hmm.
The ribbing that we have with each other is that we are all hustling. We are all hustling. So startup doing a startup is not a joke. I mean, it may be. I mean, everybody comes in saying that they want to be a Facebook or a Microsoft or whatever it is, but just remember that all of them took 25, 30 years to do the quick turnaround. The quick turnaround took about 30 years or 20 years or 10 years. So there is nothing quick in startups. It's a day in, day out grind. It's a hustling. You have to be dogged, determined. You have to be tenacious. These are the, I mean, you can have whatever traits you have, but if you're not tenacious, if you're not ready to accept defeat or failures, please don't do a startup. I mean, do something else. But if you want to do a startup that is going to succeed, these are the qualities that you need. And then once you know that you are there, you're in the game, then you have to bring others into the game. So for that, I mean, that is what talent strategy is all about: to bring the others to see your point of view, to see your vision, to live your vision, and to be with you for the next 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever that may be. So things like, even for us, I mean, having worked with startups for so long, we also try and get some we try and get the best practices from startups too. We are not a startup. We are a services company. We help startups. So I mean, last year actually we went ahead and gave stocks to all the employees. So our employee stocks are there, and so they are also excited because they see all these startups having and employees having stocks. So they ask us, why don't we also have it? So here you go, you have stocks
Yeah.
now. So we don't have, as I tell my guys, that as of so and so date, we don't have any more employees in the company. We have all shareholders. So
Definitely.
so you're not you're not employees anymore. So try and do your best so that your exit options can become larger. So I mean, in a way, so there has to be some creative ways in which startup founders can find ways to bring the team together, to work for a common purpose, and then make everybody wealthier. So So that's the long and short of the journey. But the one common factor for all startup founders is being tenacious. If you're not that, this is not meant for the lighthearted.
That's that's fantastic advice, Ken. And thank you so much for your time and being on this show.
Thank you so much for having me.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this insightful journey into talent strategy transformation on the Inclusive Insights podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe for more thought provoking content. Until next time, remember to take care of your employees and be purposeful.